the ride, so to speak. I learned all kinds of things about why you don't leave the kid in the oven too long, okay? So,
Because they'll burn.
well, because they'll burn, so to speak. So here, this is what almost got me beat up in class about 5 years ago. This statement. We're recording. Let me read that one.
Oh, that could be normal. I see why you got beat up for this.
Oh, it just says the cutoff for induction, according to the models I have found online, is if you go 2 weeks past your due date, we get the baby out. Now, Davida is saying, yes, this sounds about right.
That's what happened.
That's what, okay, good. So that's what,
Because
he said that's what happened to you guys. That's what happened with Davida's. Yeah, so the thing is, I don't know what they learn in school. All I'm doing, this is Google searches. Most of my information just comes from peer-reviewed journals.
I think it depends. I think it depends, and I think most moms are in there like 5 days after the due date asking.
Well, okay, now hang on. I'm not talking about things like that. I'm also not talking about the doctor has a golf vacation plan, so we're gonna get the baby out 3 days early. I'm not talking about any of those situations. I'm talking about, based on that curve right there, a pregnancy that is underway is going to be a natural birth pregnancy from the outset. In other words, think of it like this. When conception happens, at that moment there are a number of variables that go into developing that fetus and that baby later on. This, we all laughed at this 314. You'd laugh even more if we went 16 more past it. You laugh even more if we went 16 more past that. But that doesn't mean that particular pregnancy wouldn't have the potential of lasting that long.
Right.
It's an outlier, correct? It is an outlier, but it would have the potential of being in the oven that long, right?
But that's not that long.
But whether it's, I don't want to rate whether it's long or short. I don't want to rate any of those. Aaron, I don't want to get that. All I'm saying is, nobody's beating anybody up in here anymore. I'm already sensitive enough for this problem. Hang on. What I'm saying is, it has been the modal response that I have seen for induction cutoffs that 2 weeks past 266. So that's 14 days past, right? So that's 280. So there's 282. So we need to figure out where 280 fits up here. So in other words, anybody whose pregnancy lasts at 280 days, or 281, or 282, or 283, all of these pregnancies are going to be induced. All of those are going to be induced because those are all the pregnancies that would still be in the hospital after 280 days. Or still pregnant, I should say in the hospital, still pregnant after 280 days. My question is, how many? First question. That was the second question, actually. Next question, forward or backward?
Forward.
Definitely forward. Because you don't know the area, but you do know the 280.
Is the area the only thing that determines forward and backward? No, it's on the positive side of the...
Good, Sandy, thank you. The positive versus negative side is irrelevant. It's whether or not you know the area or not. If you know the area, it's backward. If you don't, it's forward. Yeah, that's a good compartmentalization like that.
In other words, we had the z-score this time, but we needed the percentile.
Exactly. Think about what you did last time. You went from area to z to raw. Guess what you do this time? Raw to z to area. It's exactly backwards. That's why I call them backwards. That's why I call them backwards versus forwards. Now, other profs won't call them that. So if you use that phrase in class, you might confuse them a little bit. But then explain it to them, like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So it's a backwards problem. You know the raw problem. Excuse me, this is a forwards problem. You know the raw score, going to z, going to area. So the first thing we got to do is convert that so that it sits there. And we know where it's going to be. It's going to be just south of 1, correct? 282 is 1. 280 is a little bit left. So the first thing we do, let's convert. Yes?
Oh, yes.
I think so. 280. So z, I'm going to use that one up there. We know this is 280.
280.
Minus?
260.
Absolutely. Divided by?
16.
Beautiful. 14, which we knew that was 14 days, 2 weeks. 14/16. Thank you. 0.875. Just south of 1, we knew that was going to be just south of 1. Now, just real quick, that's not a percentage. That's a standard deviation marker, right? It's 0.875 standard deviations up. Who Who said that's pretty close to zero? Somebody said earlier that's pretty close to average, that's pretty close to zero. Scott, you said something similar to that though. You said that's within 2 of the average, so therefore it's within, you said,
I can't remember.
you made a comment about how common.
Oh, right. So like,
it's
if we're
close.
looking at the ones that are at 0, their error rate is like 2 weeks about.
Well, sure, so you're actually within the error
It's
rate.
about 16.
So
it's
think
like,
about this. The closer you get to average, the more usual you are. That's pretty damn close to average, isn't it? Which means this area is pretty damn big. How big is it?
19%.
We've got it, 19, almost 20%. 19, almost, you're running to the normal, yes? Forwards, shade left, right bound, excuse me, shade right, left bound, 0.875, just about 19%. Now, I love the backstory of this problem. That's a big percentage. I love the fact that you called it about 20%. If you remember correctly, one of the quizzes you had earlier this year said express 19% as a fraction with a 1 in the numerator and an integer. It's because of this problem. That's about 20%, right? That's 1 in how many? 1 in 5. The reason I even started looking at this was when Jen was pregnant with Max. Around that same time, almost every single woman in my neighborhood was induced. For some reason, there was a bunch of kids being born roughly at the same time, within a couple of years of Max being born in my neighborhood. And almost every single one of those births was induced. And I started thinking to myself, that seems weird. Like, induction is not natural. It's us interrupting a natural cycle to create a life, right? So I decided to dig into the mathematics and see, okay, so if 7 out of 10 births in my neighborhood are inducted, is that weird? Well, not according to this, because now you could actually fuse this with the binomial probability. You now have a binomial probability. 20%, 19% of births are inducted, which means roughly 1 in 5 will be. So you're going to the store to buy a chicken, right? It's a 5-sided die now. Instead of it being 1/10 rooster and 9/10 girl, it's 2/10 rooster and 8/10 girl. Rooster being an induction, the non-rooster being a non-induction. So then you can actually apply this if you needed to. I'm not going to ask you to do that right now. But that surprised me. The fact that this is so big surprised me. It doesn't seem like it should be that big. Now, Michelle's going to argue correctly, by the way, that this all depends on the standard deviation being 16. It sure does, doesn't it? If the standard deviation is shrunken down to, say, 12 or 10, that's going to drop off because the curve's going to tighten up like this. And the 280 is going to move further out this way.
It's interesting that there's no definite science to this.
Because there's no definite science to childbirth.
Well, I mean, even when my son was like 3, 4, developmentally, they were still adjusting his birthday and all,
Medicine is about data collection,
to
isn't it?
see
Medicine.
how premature he was.
Yes.
Where his age group really
Because it's hard. Remember how I kept apologizing in the first half of this course? I'm sorry, this is a human-made formula. This is a human-made construct.
Right.
It's because we're trying to affix these human-made constructs onto a natural system that is not really governed by those constructs. That has been around thousands of years, tens of thousands of years more than our little 100 years of statistics. So you see the fact that I called it the 5th percentile, the fact that I gave it an arbitrary cutoff out of 2 weeks, Mother Nature goes, whatever, call it whatever you want. I'm going to do whatever I got to do. So that's you have to expect that in the system. And that's where I think American math education does you guys a disservice. It doesn't get you used to that until you sit in a class like this and deal with it. W to go.
No, I was gonna say, like you said, medicine uses data.
It has to, right?
So one of my good friends, when my son was supposed to be born, everybody was betting. I was like, when is he gonna be born? He's gonna be early. So he says, I'm gonna bet. He's a doctor. He says, I'm gonna bet he's gonna be at least 2 weeks late. And he was like, whoa.
Was this your first child?
Well, he deducted that because it was a first pregnancy.
First pregnancy.
And so you look at the data on that, and usually, on average, you have a late, usually behind.
It's a conditional. This is your project 1, isn't it? It's back to project 1. Given that it's your first pregnancy, what's the chance they're going to be late on the first pregnancy? I've heard the exact same thing when Jen was born. She was like 5 days overdue. But then you have to ask the question Michelle's going to ask, which is, okay, what does overdue mean? That assumes we got the conception date right. But on average, we can assume we're targeting it because we're going to be over and under. We can assume almost that the guesswork cancels each other out. But yeah, you use data to analyze that. We were also told, Jen, you're going to have an easy childbirth. You're a fit young lady. It's going to be great. 12 hours in transition labor. That was a wonderful one. Easy labor, please. Define easy, right? It wasn't 24.
That's what happened to my wife.
I don't know. Have you looked into the data of ultrasounds measuring their skulls?
No, I have not.
I mean, it would be interesting because that's how they.
Send me, if you don't mind, send me an email or remind me to look at that. I put all these ideas you guys have go into a folder that when I have time I sit down and actually get back into. I haven't. I honestly, after I almost got in a fist fight about this one, I kind of stopped doing any work on this problem. But I love bringing that up because the midwife was like, that's wrong. And I'm like, I'm not saying it's right. She's like, that is the wrong. And the reason she was saying that was because we used a midwife when Max was born. And it was a wonderful, doula.
You could have had, you probably used a midwife to deliver, but you could have had a doula that helped.
Exactly. And it was great. I mean, I said there's a lot of slow dance, and it was just a funny comment. She actually told me afterwards, she's like, you make a great doula. And I'm like, I would not dance with every woman. I'm married to this one. But the idea is that she was so tied, so emotionally invested in the act of childbirth, that any deviation from what she thought was the right way to do it was seen as an attack. And I'm like, I am not in any way attacking you or your profession, but it's so funny how we get so aggro about what we're close to, you know? Passionate, yeah. Aggro, passionate, potato. Yes.
And all three of mine were induced.
All three were induced?
All three.
Well, what's the chance of all 3 out of 3 if you got a 19%? It's a binomial problem. You got 3 roosters. You got 3 roosters. We could. But I don't want to, and here's why. It's an anecdote. It's an anecdote, right? I'm not saying anything negative about this. It's one person's experience. And the thing about anecdote is, we'll often hear about anecdote when they're outliers. But when you wash that into the entire data set, it's almost predictable. It's predictable.
Complications with all 3 of mine.
And that's something that this does not measure. This does not measure complicated. This is the problem with your project you're doing for next week, the false positive, false negative rates. The reason my neighbor was freaking out with that Down syndrome test, the one I referenced in the project, when she tested positive for Downs, she was taking a test designed for at-risk mothers. But she wasn't herself at risk. Therefore, whatever results come back are essentially null and void. I mean, I could fail a French placement exam. Oh, I suck. Wait, I never took French. I mean, why would I take a test for a French placement exam? I've never taken French. Oh, what's the point? There is no point of doing that.
You don't even smoke.
I don't even smoke. You better start. But that's the point. If you, I don't know why I did that. But if you take an at-risk test and you're not at risk, you're going to get data back. The test is going to give you a result. But it's like running 1 bar stats without L2 on a weighted mean. It's going to give you an answer, but it's meaningless. You see? And that's the problem. This data is overly simplified. I've put all of the pregnancies in. I just did it in 105 this morning. I made up a quiz form on weighted means. And they kept asking about Vegas. And I'm like, let's go even deeper than craps. Let's go roulette. Let's go with life insurance. I Googled, what is the chance I die in the coming year? I wanted to update the data from your quiz. It's 0.2241% is the chance a 41-year-old male in America will die in the coming year. So I used that for me.
But that takes into consideration, people dying from heart disease, cancer, or car accidents, or it's not tailored to.
That's the problem with it, right? The problem is it's a 0.2241 based on the fact that last year, out of 100,000 dudes in America, a certain small percentage of them died. And they're applying that to everybody. That ignores my family history, my genetics, my lifestyle, my diet, the fact that I don't sleep anymore. It ignores all of those things.
So in other words,
if you were to... It's all good.
Sean, if you were to live in a...
But the thing is... Oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
If you were to live in a blue zone, for example...
What's a blue zone?
Like a high percentage of, what is it called, centenarians. You know, people that get to live over 100 years.
Oh, like Florida. Oh, no, not though. You're not talking retirement people. You're talking about people that just live long.
No, yeah, live long. Genetically, they have.
They share a common.
They call blue zones.
Like 9 names.
So,
blue zones.
What is a 41-year-old? You know,
well, here's
chance.
Now this is interesting because on this chart, I had an actuarial table from the CDC. There's a 119-year-old section. So, if you're 119, there's a 90% chance you're going to die in that coming year. That surprised me. That means there's a 10% chance you're going to make it through. That seems high to me. Doesn't that seem high to you? 119, I would expect the chance of mortality to be 0.9999994 or something like that. It's 0.901. I'm like, holy shit, 10% of them are making it through? But then I think, how many, it says blue zone people, how many 119-year-olds are there in America? I mean, maybe there are 10 of them, and one's going to make it through. That's what 90% means at that point, right? It was surprising. It was fun to look at, but the problem with the actuarial table is it's not specific enough to me. It's a 41-year-old dude, not also ranked for race. It was ranked for gender. Guys and girls. The girls live longer. The girls have a lower chance of death. But it's not ranked for race. It's not ranked for geographic location, which is definitely different. One of the reasons we moved from the East Coast to here is because you can go outside and take a deep breath and
you want to leave
not hack. You can drink the water out of a mountain stream as long as it's high enough up the mountain and not worry about getting Giardia. I mean, there's all kinds of, or worse. So there's all kinds of things that it doesn't adjust for. And that is the danger of oversimplification, of course, Alicia. But it's at least a starting point from which you can refine with data like the medical field does, or should do anyway. It sounds like your friend does, which is great. Cool? Let's take 5. Yes? We're a little bit early, but let's take 5 and we'll do the quiz to get you guys out of here. It was a spirited debate.